Yeah. Ooh, Yahtzee, where's Final Fantasy Rebirth? Where's Dragon's Dogma 2, Yahtzee? Yahtzee, what's this strange lump on the back of my neck? Look, I'm not a fucking vending machine that dispenses videos when you load cream eggs into the slot. I'm also not a skin specialist, but that looks like an epidermoid cyst to me. I've been away. I was at DC filming D&D. Then I was at SF filming GDC. Now I'm in dire need of some TLC at the YMCA. But I did manage to play through the obligingly brief Alone in the Dark, a new addition to the IP that somehow managed to become bankable while sidestepping the usual requisite of having at least one half-decent game attached to it. The original was a pioneer, yes, arguably the first 3D survival horror, but in retrospect the characters all look like aborted Lego projects on a clashing rug and animate like they're trying to sneak across the moving walkway at the airport with sticks of butter strapped to their feet. Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare in the PS1 era was probably the best, if only because it was smart enough to just rip off Resident Evil the whole way. Then there was that creatively spirited but unwittingly camp PS3 era revival, and finally Alone in the Dark Illumination, which was a half square of crinkly inexpensive toilet paper to a long neglected and dried out dingleberry. So maybe in the name of clearing the slate, a remake of the first game is just what the IP needs. Perhaps I should say reimagining to appease the reword pedants. Despite the opening premise of coming to a 1920s Louisiana mansion in search of a missing relative and getting embroiled in unspecifically Lovecrafty shenanigans, Alone in the Dark 2024 goes in entirely its own direction after that, which again is probably for the best, but the direction they've picked is the crowded 8-lane highway signposted the usual Resident Evil 4 thing. So you know what that means, over-the-shoulder aiming and contextual button prompts up the bum, which is practically how close some of them have to be before Edward Carnby will finally consent to press A on them. Oh yeah, you also have the original game's choice between two protagonists, Emily Hartwood or Edward Carnby. Edward Carnby being just about the only consistent presence between Alone in the Dark games. I mean, some of them aren't even about being alone, or in the dark. Edward's also as consistent as he's ever been, in that he's a white dude. Disappointingly, he doesn't have that razor-sharp moustache he had in the original that meant he couldn't go swimming without also going spearfishing, but, you know, reimagining. He and Emily show up to Dissetter Mansion to find that it's gone all Shutter Island on us and is now an asylum for a load of suspect Depression-era weirdos who proceed to suspiciously weird all over us as we search for Emily's uncle, who it turns out has been using Lovecrafty magic to create weird pocket dimensions based on his memories, possibly so the orderlies couldn't catch him having a sneaky wank, and Emily and Edward keep finding themselves slipping into these places to have fights with generic gribbly monsters that probably represent the dude's sneaky wank-based paranoia or something. But Emily and Edward are just like champs. There's a cutscene where Emily returns to reality after fending off hostile wank monsters in hallucinatory New Orleans, and immediately starts awkwardly flirting with a passing convenient flapper. The protagonists are consistently a bit ahead of me, story-wise. They'll be talking to the doctor character, who couldn't be more obviously villainous if he had a Fu Manchu moustache with a strangled kitten dangling off both ends, and Edward will be like, "But what has this got to do with the convent?" And I'll be like, "What convent? Where's this convent shit coming from?" Turns out that it was mentioned in one of the random documents I'd picked up earlier. Bold of you to assume I actually read those, Edward. Sorry, but I'm typically motivated more to explore the intriguing horror mansion than I am to sit in a quiet corner reading the fucking newspaper. Show don't tell, as the exasperated stage manager said to the socially oblivious can-can dancer. But let's stop flicking at the earlobes and really dig that Q-tip in. There's only one fairly important question hanging over a horror game. Is Alone in the Dark 2024 scary? No, not really. It's fallen into the Silent Hill Shattered Memories trap. If monsters only show up in certain parts of the game, then we can skip merrily through the rest of it without a concern in our hearts, gleefully flinging unread documents in our wake. When you are in combat, it isn't terribly inspired. There's a pistol, there's a shotgun, there's a drum magazine Tommy gun that kind of breaks the difficulty, but what can you do? The Tommy gun is to Depression-era settings what Harley Quinn is to any DC Universe property. People complain if you don't put it in. There's also melee combat, but some gleeful imp replaced all the weapons with breadsticks that snap after 2 or 3 hits, although the protagonist's technique probably doesn't help, as they tend to wave the things around like they're teaching a Dalek how to swing dance. There's also contextual, throwable items in the environment, which are occasionally Molotovs and ostensibly light enemies on fire, although it looks more like they've just put on delightful little orange ballet tutus, and are really efficient for making you nostalgic for the really good fire physics from the identically titled game from 15 fucking years ago. But most of the time the throwables bounce off enemies like crumpled paper balls off a stupid dog's face. The game tells you to use them as distractions so you can stealth past the dudes, but I know stealth games, and you, Alone in the Dark, are no stealth game. Sneaking past dudes just means having to deal with them later when you get spotted further down the line and get swarmed by everything on the map like you're the last chocolate biscuit at a Weight Watchers meeting. And besides, oh yeah, that's a real terrifying monster you got there, Mr. Horror Game, staring idiotically at a bit of wall because I just hefted an egg carton at it. You're gonna have to do better than that to stand out. What else you got? Do you like puzzles, Yart? Sure do. Do you like jigsaw puzzles with a maximum of 9 pieces? Oh yes, they keep my 4-year-old occupied while I do grown-up things like crosswords and rewiring electronics. Don't suppose you've got anything like that? No, it's mostly baby jigsaws, but you have to rotate the pieces sometimes. Yeah, I think the word I'm going to write on the sign nailed to the top of Alone in the Dark 2024's cross is uninspired. Uninspired combat, uninspired puzzles, a plot that's all over the place, and characters I just can't get in sync with, and not just because I've never worn a trilby or unironically addressed a woman as Dame. What? That's a fedora.